So obviously the number one thing that everyone is talking about this morning is the House deciding to move forward with articles of impeachment against President Donald Trump. Those two articles specifically are abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. Tara, I'm going to start with you. This doesn't really come as a surprise.
No, we've talked about this a few times, specifically on this segment too, and I think this is just the next step in that impeachment process. I think that Congress has done their due diligence throughout this process, and so we'll see what happens when this plays out.
All right, Matt, obviously the president not a fan of this. He's called this a witch hunt all along. Of course, he's gone to Twitter to discuss how he feels about this and that he's being unfairly targeted. You have Republicans saying the Democrats are just trying to undo the election because they don't like the guy.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd say is the politics of this are becoming pretty clear. The Democrats are not unified, and Republicans are unified. And that tells you everything you need to know right there. In fact, there's a story that just posted just in the last 10 minutes on Politico that said 10 vulnerable Democratic House members met privately to try to discuss a censure of Trump rather than impeachment. So the politics of this is just not working for Democrats. You're seeing opposition to removal from office increase. It's increasing among independent voters. It's increasing in battleground states. And there's a clear reason for that. Abuse of power was tried on Andrew Johnson. It didn't work. That impeachment article was defeated. You can't really impeach on obstructing Congress. That's an executive privilege claim. That's being adjudicated. You can't criminalize executive privilege claims. The Obama administration claimed executive privilege on Fast and Furious and a number of other things. So that's a very common thing of a battle between the two executive branches, the executive branch and the legislative branch. In this case, last week, all we heard was talk about bribery and extortion. Those articles weren't brought. Why is that? I don't know. Probably because there's no evidence of bribery, no evidence of extortion. So the Democrats are making this up as they go. I think this is failing. It's clearly going to fail in the Senate. And I'll predict right now, not only were there 2 Democrats that voted against the inquiry vote on the House floor, there are going to be more than 2 Democrats that vote against the articles of impeachment on the House floor as soon as this week or early next.
All right. Tara, I want to give you a chance to, address what Matt said, particularly when he's talking about the evidence and the fact that what we're hearing being talked about, the high crimes and misdemeanors that we're hearing being talked about keep changing.
Yes, and I think that this has been, a fact-finding mission from the start. Really, what we know now and what are in these articles of impeachment is that Trump tried to bribe a foreign entity to interfere in our upcoming election, therefore sabotaging our votes as Americans and our votes at home. And so really, this is a matter of election integrity. This is a matter of making sure that our upcoming election, that there isn't any cheating, and his obstruction of justice and his lack of really, working with Congress to even disprove some of these things and to come out and even let people testify, let the truth come out. If there wasn't anything to hide, why wouldn't Trump want to speak out about this? I don't see that kind of being, coming out here.
Yeah.
So
I want to talk a little bit about the timeline of how this all will play out. Now, first things first is the House Judiciary Committee is going to have to vote on whether or not to send this to the full House. That's expected to happen Thursday. So it likely will go to the full House, but we've got some other things brewing that the House needs to pass. We've got, a spending bill that's got to get through. We've got things going on with trade deals, and the likelihood that the president is going to sign these bills if the House votes to impeach him first is what?
Yeah, I mean, you had this ridiculous split screen this morning where Speaker Nancy Pelosi was introducing articles of impeachment at 9 a.m. Eastern and then holding a press conference on the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade deal less than an hour later. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. We've never seen this happen before where they're trying to slap the president with one hand and then reach out in negotiation on the other hand. You're right. The work that the American people are counting on is not getting done. We did finally see an agreement on U.S.-Mexico-Canada deal. That's taken more than a year. It's absolutely ridiculous trying to negotiate improved enforcement provisions over an entire year. As you say, spending bill. The spending bill, I think, expires December 20th. They have, I think, 5 or 6 more legislative days to get that done. The sequencing here matters as well, because once the House passes impeachment, the Senate has to begin a trial, and nothing else can come before that. So they need to pass the government spending bill and get it through the House and Senate to keep that going, to keep the budget going. There's some sequencing here that matters. But look, from my standpoint on impeachment, no crime, no victim. The Ukrainian government has said they weren't pressured. most of the witnesses were offering second and third-hand testimony, and the reason the White House didn't participate is because it wasn't a fair process. They weren't allowed to compel testimony. They weren't allowed to invite witnesses. I mean, it's been a ridiculous sham process from the very beginning.
Tara, do you feel like all of this is distracting the House from the work that has to get done?
No, I think there's been multitasking happening throughout this process, and so we know that our congressional representatives are still passing other bills. They are still doing other things. It just doesn't get covered as much in the news because we talk about impeachment, and it's a huge historical moment for us. So I think other things are happening. I do see a spending bill getting passed. I don't think there's any concerns here.
Okay, but obviously I just want to point out the time is ticking, right? We've got 10 days before we get this bill passed, or government is going to shut down, which is the thing that happens, it seems more often than not, which is not ideal. Obviously, we could keep talking about this, but my producer is telling me my time is up in my ear. So thank you both for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.